Hello, my name is Olga Salazar. I'm the founder of Mexico Wine Club. I'm based in London and I'm trying to communicate the world's wine capital about Mexico as a winemaking region. Today, I'm honored to have my first guest. His name is Hans Backhoff. He is the founder of Monte Xanic, one of the Mexican leading wineries. Hello, Hans. How are you?
Hi, Olga. How are you? It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, I'm so happy, really. I think everyone is going to appreciate how important it will be to hear from you as the first guest about the history of Mexico. Before before getting to that, I would like to know a little bit of Monte Xanic and a little bit about you. If you can tell everyone else.
Yes, of course. Well, Monte Xanic was founded in 1987 by my father and his partners. Monte Xanic was had the idea. The partners had the idea of producing the first ultra premium winery in Mexico. It was a very big challenge because during those times Mexican wine was not very well known, and quality wines in Mexico was also something that was not heard of before. So there was no market for them in Mexico, and we had to start just playing around to see how the market would react regarding high quality Mexican wines. And we invested in and embedded on technology. So Monte Xanic was always very advanced in its own ways in agriculture and the part of winemaking in reference to the technology process and innovation. So we at the end, the good news was we didn't have to drink all our wine, and there was a market for it in Mexico. And after that, there was a big movement and a lot of new upcoming smaller wineries, and even the bigger ones started to change their own philosophy in the methodology of how to produce wine, and started following our leadership in producing premium wines.
Of course, of course. And what about your own wine journey? Because you mentioned that your father was one of the pioneers and Monte Xanic is one of the wineries that pioneered in the Baja California region as one of the most important regions in Mexico nowadays. But tell me about your journey. So how was growing, among vineyards and about talking about wine with your father? What was your involvement nowadays? And I also how that formed you, because I read that you actually study enologist in France as well. So I imagine that
Yeah,
it came from your youth and what you learned those days.
definitely. I think that I had a very interesting, growing up way, sort of way, because I went. My backyard was the vineyards, and my mentor was my father. So in that way, I always was very close, to the industry, and it's something that I understand from the natural point to the agriculture point to the winemaking point, and with my partners or my father's partners now today, we've managed to really professionalize the industry. So that's been a part of of the changes and growth that we've done in the recent years. But yes, I'm one of those kids that we already knew what we were going to study before going to college. We know that we liked the vineyards and the winemaking process. So for me, it was a very natural step. It wasn't difficult at all. I studied in food science in Tecnológico de Monterrey in Mexico. Then I went and I studied winemaking in Bordeaux, France. I had the opportunity to work with Chateau Lafite, Calon Ségur,
Mhm.
and after that, I went and did an MBA in Wales, in the UK, and then
Wow.
I came back and worked a little bit with the Shalom Wine Group in the United States. And then my father said, "Please come back. You need to start working here." So I came back, and I started my career in Monte Xanic, and scaled all the way up. And now I'm also the president of the national organization called Consejo Mexicano Vitivinícola, which is basically the biggest organization in wine and viticulture in Mexico.
Amazing. And what you learned in Bordeaux, so what you saw there and all of the experience that you gathered there, is it something that while you were there, you thought like, oh my God, like we have something that we can create in Mexico with the terroir? Well, we already knew that because your father was making wine in Mexico, but it's something that you took nowadays in Monte Xanic, that you're applying it there?
Of course. I mean, it was an amazing journey, and also a challenge, right? But at the end of the day, a lot of the information regarding how to visualize soil, how to understand terroir, how to treat the different root systems and clones, where does Cabernet like it better, where does Merlot belong. All of those situations was very important for me to understand the viticulture part, but also in the winemaking there was a lot of big changes during that time in the industry. So for example, I had the fortune of having a professor called Yves Glory, who is the father of polyphenols in the world. And today polyphenols are a big part of the winemaking process, because it's not only sugar and acidity, the two variables that everybody was looking before, but now the third variable and very important one is polyphenols, and the fourth probably pH. But those two have been an amazing change in the recent probably 15 years, and nowadays those methods and those analyses are very important to follow up in the evolution of the maturity in the grapes, so you can enhance quality in your wines. And all of that, it just came back, and I started implementing all those methods, started measuring and trying to understand how those polyphenols played the game in Guadalupe or in Ojos Negros, depending on where you were. Obviously, if you are in a higher place and it's cooler, there's more of that extraction or that possibility. And that was kind of the first things that came into mind. Then other things came in and started playing also a big role, like for example the Mistral system, which I already started working with Lafite in previous years, but they had an sort of own homemade sort of technology for that, and it was a sorting table with very precision on what sort of grapes they wanted to be fermenting, and that selection was not only done by the human eye, but was also done by a mechanical part that was very efficient, and that we were the first winery in Latin America to start working with the Mistrals and started doing that selection. And that's just two or three things that come into mind, but there's a lot of obviously of influence, and obviously the language also starts helping out today with my representation of Mexico in the OIV is been very important, especially as a representative of Mexico, and having that fortune of speaking three languages also kind of helps out.
Of course. Is the third language French?
Yes.
Oh, amazing. But it sounds super interesting to me, and I guess it shows as well how how the Mexican wine and the winemakers, someone like you understand exactly what technologies are out there to create something that is such a big quality. But if we are talking about the place where you have your vineyard, because sometimes I encounter that I'm talking about wine in Mexico, and people still tend to be surprised that we make wine, and they don't understand, and they're a little bit confused, like where is it? So you make wine in the Baja California region. Do you mind telling us a little bit why is this a region that is suitable to make wine? What is it that, you know, the conditions that you have, the terroir itself, and what grapes do you grow currently?
Yeah, so we are producing grapes here in Ensenada, and Ensenada has that possibility of being close to the ocean, so it has a very interesting Mediterranean climate. We have different valleys all around Ensenada, when the main one is Valle de Guadalupe. Valle de Guadalupe is around 300 meters above sea level. It's a valley that has about 15 kilometers proximity to the sea. So it's a semi-desertic place. It has soils that, you know, come in to play with granite, sand, red clay, brown clay, limo. So we have a difference of sort of soils in different places depending on where you are. If you're next to the riverbed or you're close to the mountains. And you know, just it's an important part because we have very dry um, summers and wet winters, which are very important for quality wine. Um, Also, the coolness of the sea comes into play a big role, especially during the summers. So our grapes are kept cool during the summer, and you know the precipitation here is about 350 millimeters. So that's about 12 inches of rain, you know, a year, which is not that much, but it's enough, you know, for us to produce fine wine. So that's Guadalupe, and that's where probably 70% of the grapes from Mexico are produced today. We also have a big chunk of hectares in Ojos Negros, which is 900 meters above sea level, and that condition is quite different. We love it because it's very close to the sierras, so we have very nice and clean quality water. The winters there are a little bit more extreme, but we can play with all different sorts of grapes that now can be planted up there, you know, and start to specialize now in what sort of grapes we can put in the soil in those sort of places and start differentiating now from Valle Guadalupe.
And what sorts of grapes do you have? Well, I have a broad idea what is it that you're growing, but if you can tell everyone else, what are the main varietals that you have, and which one do you think are growing better in your state?
We mainly have Bordeaux varieties, but we also have some varieties that have been growing really interesting. So we've been doing a lot of trials. We out of Bordeaux varieties, we have Chardonnay, we have Chenin, we have Syrah, and Nebbiolo. And going more into the Bordeaux varieties, in the reds, we have Cabernet, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Malbec, and Petit Verdot. And we have also Sauvignon Blanc in the whites. I think that two of the varieties that are, or three of the varieties that are doing quite impressively is Cabernet, Sauvignon Blanc, and Tempranillo and Nebbiolo. These are four of the varieties I think that have a strong influence, and we can talk about now differentiations of terroirs and having these varieties express very typical wines.
Yes. But I actually I tried the Sauvignon Blanc from Viña Cristel about, maybe it was a month ago. I tried here with an English colleague, and we were very surprised because it was a lovely acidity. It had lovely acidity, and as well of the characteristics from the Sauvignon Blanc. And I think his immediate reaction is like, "Oh my God, like this is grown in Mexico." And I was speaking to your sister, and she told me about that you're harvesting at night and you're having different ways to manage all of that and control the acidity. Do you mind telling us a little bit about all of these winemaking techniques that you're doing there as well?
No, that I'm glad to. Sauvignon Blanc, I think, is a really good example of things that we've been perfecting on time wise. These varieties they grow very natural, and they're happy plants. You always want to have that problem, right? Because then you can figure out a way to start taking out, of what you really need from the plant for towards the grapes in quality, just in the different parts of the physiological part of the plant. So for us, Sauvignon Blanc, we've really managed to understand, the different ways to conduce it, and I think these nice, crisp, very fresh wines that have the typicity of the Sauvignon Blanc, especially talking about, these this fruit part, but also this herbal part and flowery part is important, because that's how, the Sauvignon should taste like. So that's, the first thing that you're looking for, is that, this typicity is there. And we really managed to put up that fruit in front and put that herbal part in the back, and still be part of a combination that, that is part of the same wine. And I think that these varieties in different parts, because we're also playing with Sauvignon Blanc in higher elevations, have been just having a very, it's a different Sauvignon Blanc from, your typical New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, but it's still, maybe it doesn't have that same fruit, but it has different sorts of fruits, and at the same time it has that herbal part at the end, which make it really unique. So at the very end, it all comes down to terroir, right? And the terroir here is something that we've been figuring out, and we're really proud of the Sauvignon Blancs that we're producing here. And I think those are exactly that reaction that you had when you tasted that wine was, wow, this is Valle de Guadalupe, this is Mexico, this freshness, these aromas, all these citric part, this flowery part, and that, very subtle herbal part to the end is exactly what we've been enhancing to produce.
And I think it's a testimony of how, how amazing are the winemaking techniques that you guys are using, but also the place itself, the conditions that you're mentioning. Because people will tend to believe that maybe red will grow better and they'll have the greatest ripeness, and the whites will be a little bit more difficult. But yeah, exactly what you said. I was so surprised. And yes, so it wasn't a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, it wasn't your typical French Sauvignon Blanc, but it was very much a Sauvignon Blanc, which are really a good acidity that was like, okay, we're sold.
You know what they say, Olga, in winemaking, and this is very popular with, winemakers, is the key to a winery, it's its whites, because the whites can lie. The whites will tell you everything you need to know. And if you're doing things correctly, then the whites is the perfect way, is the perfect interest to understand a winery, because you can't have faults in there, And when you're talking about, terroir, and you can start to open up, towards the winery if you taste the whites.
Yes, amazing. And another thing that I want to say, you being the president, as you mentioned, of the Consejo Mexicano Vitivinícola, I mean that you are also aware and what's happening out there, Mexico as a whole country, and not only in Baja California. Can you tell us a little bit how it's growing, how more regions in Mexico are starting to produce wine, and what do you see in the future as well?
So Mexico is a country that's been producing wine for quite a long time. No, the oldest winery in the continent is Mexico. So it's ironic that our culture hasn't been, that well adapted and evolved as it should, as you would imagine. But today, this tradition is still going on, and there's a lot of interest, and there's a lot of expansions going on in the recent years. Today, we have around 15 states that are producing wines in our country. We have from the north, which is Baja California, Coahuila, Chihuahua. Now we have Sonora, Nuevo León, and closer into the south. Now in Bajío with Aguascalientes, Zacatecas, Guanajuato, and Puebla and Jalisco, just to name a few. So, yeah, I mean, they're all beginning to to understand the functions of the microclimates. And it's a process of better understanding what your situation is and how the terroir works. And they're producing fine wines, and that's really impressive, because now you can taste a good Merlot from Guanajuato, or you can taste an excellent wine from Querétaro. No, so it's really interesting to see how that is working. I mean, Mexico is so big as geographical niches that it could have, so it's kind of logical, but you would have to understand where you are and how to work with that. And I think that's part of what we're seeing right now. Mexico is still consuming about liter 0.2 in per capita per person a year, which is very small if you compare it to other consuming countries like Chile, that must be around 15 liters per capita. And I won't even go to Europe or England, the UK. It should be about 9 liters or so, but it's
13 liters now, by the way, in the UK.
13
Yes,
liters. Yes. So yeah, I mean, it's we're small, but we've been growing quite fast. So if you were to go 15 years before today, we were in 180 mLs, no? So that's even we multiply that by 6, and that's where we are today. And we believe we can get to 3 liters eventually in the next 10 years. I think that Mexico is growing its curiosity, and it's consuming 2-digit increase in volume and value in the market from the past 15 years. And it's they've been learning a lot from pairings and the ingredients. Gastronomically, Mexico is amazing. It has so many things to play with. And before, there was a lot of taboos, so there's a lot of thinking that you can't pair these ingredients with these wines, and it's quite the opposite. It's you're going to have more fun, because there's so many things you can explore. And why not? You can try a mole with a sparkling wine, and you'll find out that it's one of the best experiences you'll have in your life. But anyway, it's part of what we're evolving. And professional wise, I think our wines in these times is a perfect example in what you need as a professional industry. So we are doing a lot of research, a lot of academic growth now with the OIV representation, and this we're very close now to this source of innovation and science, implementing it in Mexico. So our wines have been doing really good, and they've been increasing in quality tremendously in the past years. We're very proud of what Mexico has been accomplishing, and really excited, for the future, because our potential is there.
I think so, and I think one of the strongest things, and you mentioned, is the dynamic that we have, how dynamic the country is, how dynamic our cuisine is. So as we have such a lovely cuisine, and we create such a great spirits like mezcal, tequila, or beer, I think it's time now that we also start speaking about the great wines that we make in Mexico. And most important, that the blends, as well as crazy that they can look or different they are dynamic as our culture is and our cuisine is as well. And I think that's why they compare really nicely, and it's one of the strongest things.
Definitely. I mean, I kind of look at it in that way. It's a no-brainer, right? But also trying to look at it as the fruit quality and vegetable qualities. Mexico is known worldwide. We're producing the best avocados, the best tomatoes, the best it's amazing. The best lemons, and grapes is not an exception. Grapes are they're happy here. They're easy to grow. We just need to figure out the best ways of expressing those aromas and those structures in in what we're looking for. And yes, we're doing it, and we're doing it really good. So it's really exciting.
Can you tell me, now that you had experience in Bordeaux, what will be the best thing about making wine in Mexico, in your experience?
I think that the challenge today is understanding, our terroir, because one of the main things when you're talking about wine, um, that one of the strongest variables, or the strongest attributes that you can have, is experience. And Monte Xanic, we've been in the market for 35 years, right? That's not a lot, for traditional countries that have been producing wine for a long time. But for us, it's almost 4 decades that we've been experimenting on things that we know now what to do and not what to do. And the things that we're doing well is because we understand, how it works. And experience is what we need right now. We need to understand innovation, technology. Viticulture has been really taking big steps in the world. There's a lot of investigation and new discoveries of what sorts of clones or roots stocks, and just to understand what are the best places to express a Cabernet or maybe a Tempranillo is part of this time consuming experience that you should start to understand better. And the different sorts of soils is it's really impressive how a Cabernet can express itself differently from a sand soil, from a granite soil, from a clay soil, and that is perfection. That's understanding better where you are. That is for us, where we need to concentrate. That is where our potential is, and we need to figure out what the best expression for all our wines in the different varieties are in different soils, because Mexico is so big. We there's probably a better place for different varieties all across the country that we will eventually be there and exploiting correctly. And at the end, everything is would not work if we don't have a sustainable environment. And I think that in that case, we've been working really good. We've been evolving really fast in understanding how to take care of our environment, especially when we want active soils. It's really important that our soils give us the best the best nutrients and ingredients that we need for our grapes, and that's the best way that we can get that terroir inside our wines.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think you are, yeah, it's very wise what you're saying, and I think that's one of the things that I'm excited to see. What is the grape that's going to find its home in Mexico? And maybe we're gonna have a few. As you say, we have so many diverse states and microclimates that maybe we'll have different grapes that grow there. And I think that's the next step for Mexico, and I'm very excited to discover that. And before we go, because I could stay here all day long talking about Mexican wine and about your experiences, I want to ask you a few questions. So, if you were to pick a Mexican wine that you like, what's your favorite? What will it be?
I love, it's for me, that's a very it's a tough question, because I'm a I have my preferences, right? So I'm a white wine guy. I love whites because I think that, as I expressed before, they're very straightforward. Um, and probably 70% of what I drink is whites normally.
Mhm.
Um, I discovered that Sauvignon Blanc is a variety that is so expressive, and has if you have the right conditions, and you um, can understand what they are, what you can do with that is magic. I love Viña Cristel. and I also like the best. We've been working on a project for 5 years now that is a Sauvignon Blanc Reserva, and we put it in now inside our portfolio with Gran Ricardo. So it's our Grand Reserve Sauvignon Blanc, and it's handpicked. It's comes from 60-year-old vines. It's out of this world, you know. Sauvignon Blanc for me is for has a lot of potential for us in Mexico, and I love it when we talk about Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh, amazing. Hopefully I get to try it soon. Yeah, sounds delicious. And what about a wine, your favorite one, but outside of Mexico? I think this is an even hardest question.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's also it depends on where you've grown and what your um, you know where your adventures have taken you to, right? So I have my heart divided in two regions, France and the US, especially Napa. Um, but I love Bordeaux wines. For me, um, I have the best experience there, and I have a very a big attachment to Chateau Lafite, obviously. So I love a good Cabernet, and the same. You know, if you were to be in Napa um, and just try all this diversity of Cabernets, it's amazing. You know, and for me, they really narrow it down and manage to fully understand the Cabernet expression and potential. So that's what I want to do here in Mexico. I just want to have the best expression. I just want to enhance that, and I think that our soils are perfect for it.
Yeah. Now that you're talking about the Bordeaux and the Cabernet Sauvignons, I'm pretty sure who is behind the Grand Ricardo that I also tried like a month ago. And
Definitely.
Final question. So, for somebody who haven't tried Mexican wine, but it has the opportunity, what would you say if they're not sure what to think? How would you encourage them to go for it?
Well, it's like you said, right? If we are already well known for our beer, for our tequilas or mezcal, and also, our quality fruits, why not wine? And wine makes so much sense actually, because we have so many options on where to plant different vineyards depending on what you want. And it's Mexico is such a great country that their flavor is in the soil, and when you're tasting wine, you're tasting those terroirs.
Yes. So you say definitely go for it.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Hans. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I enjoyed this conversation very much, and I'm sure everyone else who's gonna listen to it are gonna see the potential of Mexico as a winemaking region. Thank you very much.
Olga, it's my pleasure, and hope to meet you soon in person.
Yeah.